everyone. Come on in because we are doing a Ready to Love, a special video. And I am going over the two interviews between Lizell and Vernisha. He said, she said, who's the liar, who's the snake? Or as everyone was calling Lizell down in the chat, in the Chris Alexo interview, Lizell. I love that. I love that and had to steal it for my thumbnail. I don't know who came up with it, but whoever you are, whoever came up with it first, bravo, bravo, bravo. And I'm going to use it because that's exactly what he is, a Lizell. Now, I'm just not going to talk about Lizell and all his lies because I know y'all don't think it's my intent to help women, but it really is. It really is. And so, I was really dumbfounded when there were so many people who didn't see that the move that happened between Vernisha and Lizell was a snake move from the very beginning. From the very, very beginning. And if y'all remember my video, I expressed some real disappointment in Vernisha because it was my opinion. And like I said, this is my YouTube channel. It's my opinion. We all got one. And that's why I always ask you guys, drop down in the comments and leave yours too, so you can have a voice on the channel too. But it is my opinion that at Vernisha's grown age, she should have known that Lizell was a snake and that he is a Lizell. I felt that her grown age, with as much dating experience as she has had, she should have known right away. I know a lot of y'all said, well, why should she have known right away? And I said, because of the way that he moved. And I think where I differ from some people out here is not what you can do, is should you do it and how you did it. My biggest gripe with Lizell and my biggest gripe with Vernisha was that it was sloppy. How he transitioned from Charisse, how he tried to transition from Charisse to Vernisha was sloppy. It was very, very sloppy. It was messy. It's how you get into these things out here in the world where y'all got these relationship statuses called situationships, or it's complicated. It was sloppy. And I said to myself, Lizell is too grown to be making moves like this and not know it's a sloppy move. And that's why I knew he was a snake. Many people said, well, the rules say that you can date anyone. I don't care about the rules. The rules say a lot of things. People can do whatever they want in life, okay? But when I'm looking for a mate, I have to practice discernment. Some of y'all call it being judgy. That's fine. That's fine. When you are looking for a mate, you have to scrutinize the people because this is going to be something in your life. So I'm just not going to go off what you can do. I'm going to go off what choices does a person want and what choices does a person make. And would I want that person in my life making those same sort of choices if I were in those shoes? And when I saw what Lizell did to Charisse, I thought it was sloppy. I thought he didn't tie up those loose ends. And I wouldn't want to be Charisse in that circumstance. And I also didn't like what Vernisha did. I didn't like that Vernisha started talking to Lizell and she hadn't had a conversation with Charisse. She didn't know definitively if Charisse even liked Lizell because we find out later she was going to choose Lizell as her keeper. Vernisha didn't know. She didn't know. And she moved whatever way she wanted to move. And that's why I said that was messy. I was disappointed in Vernisha that she didn't see from the beginning that what Lizell did was a snake move. And let me tell you, it came back to bite her. It came back to bite her. Because what she overlooked with Lizell, when Lizell made that snake move from Charisse to her, and she played along with the snake move in the beginning, she played along with the snake move. She engaged in conversation. And we're going to get into the he say, she said on how it all happened. But she engaged. She stayed in the ring with him. Later on, guess what? She gets bit by the same thing that Sharice got bit by. Because remember, Lizell didn't communicate with Sharice. Lizell didn't wrap it up with Sharice. Lizell didn't say, hey, you know what? Let me say goodbye to Sharice. I'm going to go over here and holler at Vernisha. It's fair game. We can do that, but let me button it up with Sharice. He didn't do that. Some people would say, well, he didn't have no obligation to do it. You're right. He didn't have an obligation to do it. I'm not going off of obligation. I'm not going off obligation. I'm going off your morals, your standards, and your behavior. That's what I'm going off of. Courtesy, respectfulness. What type of person are you? Do you only do things because you have to do it? Or do you do things because you think it's the right thing to do? He didn't feel it was the right thing to do. He felt he didn't owe Sharice anything. And what he did was he decided to slide on over there with Vernisha. Vernisha had a relationship with Sharice. She didn't feel an obligation to ask Sharice, hey, you know what? Mizell has hit me up. I just want to make sure you don't have no real interest in him, because I think he's cute or whatever else. If you don't want him, maybe I will entertain him. Let me talk to you first. She didn't feel like she had an obligation to do it because, as she said, Sharice didn't come to her and tell her nothing, so she didn't ask. There you go. Sharice didn't come to her and tell her anything about Mizell or the way she felt about Mizell. So since Sharice didn't tell her, she felt Mizell was fair game. Maybe this is the reason why in this last episode, when we were all wondering, I wonder why Sharice is running by her 2 dates by Vernisha and Zadia. Maybe Sharice decided, hey, the last time I didn't communicate with these ladies of who I was interested in. And next thing I know, one of them is running up on the man I was going to choose. So maybe this time what I would do is I'll actually pull them to the side and actually tell them what I'm thinking about these two men. So that way I don't run into the same problem, because Sharice was hurt by what happened. She may not admit it because Sharice is a proud person. She's a proud person. She's not going to admit it, but she was hurt by it. So maybe this last episode, when she pulls Vernisha and Zadia to the side to discuss her dates, maybe she decides to do that now because of what happened before. Because I believe deep down inside, Sharice knows that was foul. But she don't want to start no mess with Vernisha over it. But Sharice, deep down inside, knows she was hurt by it. And even if Snake Mizell didn't know how to do it, she probably would have expected more from her friend Vernisha. But in the end, Vernisha got bit by the same snake that bit Sharice. Because what Snake Mizell did was he dismissed Sharice. He dismissed her without having a conversation, and he quickly pivoted to Vernisha. What happened to Vernisha was that when Mizell came back for the little mixer and he was talking to Sharice and Tamika, guess who he dismissed the second time? Vernisha. He dismissed Vernisha. That's why Vernisha was so upset, because he downplayed it. He tried to make it pretend like he wasn't the one that chased her. He tried to pretend like she was chasing him. He tried to downplay that they were flirting. He downplayed everything. He lied. And so the very thing, the very moral character now she's getting mad at him about, because now they got turned on her, it's the same thing he did to Sharice. It was the same thing he did. He dismissed Sharice. He didn't talk to Sharice. He didn't have open conversation with Sharice. He misrepresented the truth with Sharice. And now it wasn't a problem for Vernisha then. She was willing to go along with it. But now when he's talking here to Tamika and Sharice in their face, and he's lying to Sharice and Tamika's face, but he's now lying about Vernisha, now Vernisha's upset. Now Vernisha is upset. Well, guess what? You play with snakes, you get bit by snakes. So what I'm going to turn this video in to do is how to spot a snake. Because I would have thought at Vernisha's grown age, she would have seen that snake coming from a mile away when she saw the move he made, and she would have pivoted away from that. But she didn't. She didn't. So that tells me Vernisha doesn't know how to spot a snake. And I'm telling you, this is probably part of what goes on in her dating life, because she often talks about it. She actually talked about it in the Crystal XO video. So first of all, let's go over the he said, she said. Let's actually go over it because we got two things. We got a he said, we got a she said, and then we got a text message. That's what we have. And we're going to go over the three different versions. But in the end, I'm telling you, Lizell is a liar. But let me tell you about Vernisha. She's an accomplice. If there's a crime and there's an accomplice, the criminal, the real criminal is Lizell. He's the real criminal. But Vernisha is an accomplice because Lizell can't do all this. He can't make all these snake moves without Vernisha. You see what I'm saying? This is why I want people to take accountability, because we can't always just talk about what the men do over here, because the men can't do what they do unless there's a woman who's willing to go along with it. So I'm not going to spend all my videos always talking about what the men do wrong. I want to educate women over here to say, women over here, stop going along with the snake man over here, because the snake man cannot do what he does without the women helping him. One of the first stories where we started reconciling the stories between Vernisha and Lizell centers around how it all got started. They both agree it all got started because after filming was over, they all were in this lobby or wherever they're filming, hotel, I don't know where they are. They're all in the lobby, and somehow, some way, the bags of both Lizell and Tabari are lost. They had left their bags in the hallway while they were filming the scene, and when they came back after the scene, the bags were lost. And these bags contained all their personal items, their wallet, their car keys, and their phone. This is happening to both Tabari and Lizell at the exact same time. Everything is wrapping up. The ladies are getting in their vans, ready to go home because it's late and people are tired. It's told that at that particular time, Vernisha says that they're ready to go. Zadi is ready to go. Sharice is ready to go. She says Sharice has an attitude around this time. Probably she has an attitude because she probably saw Lizell and Vernisha flirting at the mixer. And she's probably upset about it, but she's not saying anything. So let me backtrack on the first lie. The first lie that's told by Lizell is that he and Vernisha were not flirting at the mixer. He says, well, it was only a 40-second conversation, but he lists about 10 things that they talked about. How could you talk about those 10 things? Kids, where you live, all that in 40 seconds, Lizell. That was your first lie. We also saw the footage where we know that he was flirting with Vernisha. We could tell he was flirting. And we were going to have to say that Vernisha told the truth because Vernisha said, yep, he was absolutely flirting with me. We both caught each other's eyes. Vernisha admitted that she found Lizell very attractive. But Lizell, on the other hand, said, yeah, Vernisha was attractive, but I wasn't flirting with her. So there he goes in his interview already denying Vernisha. This is the man Vernisha entertained. Now he's denying that at the mixer that he was even flirting with Vernisha. That became the first lie. Now they get down, the filming is over, they're down in the lobby. You have, the wallets are lost, the keys are lost. The story then is told that Vernisha expresses concern to them that, wow, production lost your stuff. The two men are saying, yeah, they lost our stuff. We can't find our stuff. That becomes the story. All of them gathered around, they lost their stuff. Now we want to know about how did it go from having a conversation about that the men lost their stuff or production lost their stuff to phone numbers being exchanged between Vernisha and Lizell. Vernisha told everyone on the show, we all saw it, when she was talking to Ashley. She was sitting there in that kitchen, smiling and giggling. Ooh, Lizell asked my telephone number and he's been texting me. So we all saw it. We all saw the scene when Vernisha was proud and happy to say that Lizell asked for her telephone number and they've been texting back and forth all day long. She was happy to say it. Happy to say it. She was proud to say it, which means she didn't even know that she was dealing with a snake. She didn't know. That's what I'm saying. That's maybe why I got to do this video, because she hadn't even known that she was dealing with a snake. Remember, Mizell is even denying that he was even flirting with her at the show at this time. Mizell then says in an interview that Vernisha tells him, this is his version, he said that Vernisha was expressing care and concern. He found that endearing. He found that attractive. And she says, let me know if they find your phone. He said, he said, let me know if they find your bags. And he says to her, well, I don't even have my phone to let you know. He then says, Vern said, then give me your number. And that's when he gave Vernisha his number. That's his version. Okay? I don't make sure I don't confuse nobody. Vernisha said, let me know when they find your bags. He says, well, my phone was in my bags. She says, well, give me your number. And that's how Vernisha and him exchanged numbers. He's saying that she asked him for her number. Her version of the story is she's been drinking. Vernisha said that she had been drinking. In fact, she was saying initially it was all very blurry to her, fuzzy to her. She didn't know initially how they even exchanged phone numbers. This is Vernisha's version. I've been drinking. It's blurry. So I don't know. Can I even trust the testimony of Vernisha? But Vernisha said it was actually Zadia who had to remind her that actually no. It was Mizell who asked for your number. And Vernisha said, oh, really? Oh, I couldn't even remember because I was drinking. I was drunk because production wants to keep us drunk. And I wasn't thinking. Another warning, don't get drunk around snakes because when you get drunk around snakes, then that's what happens. You lose your mind and then you don't have good discernment. Don't get drunk around strange men. Learn how to have your drink limit. Figure out what it is. Is it 1 glass of champagne, 1 glass of whatever, 2 glasses? Know your limit and stop because you do not want to lose your discernment around snakes and strange men because then you end up where Vernisha's ending up. So what Vernisha's story is, no, she didn't ask Vern. She didn't ask Mizell for his number. He asked her for her number. And what he did was he took the phone from Vernisha. He took her phone and he dialed his phone, which is how we know we get phone numbers these days. We don't hand nobody no piece of paper. We don't hand anyone a piece of paper with our telephone number. And we also don't tell people this is my number and then go into your contacts and put it in. No, all we do is, hey, I'm going to dial my number on your phone and then you have my phone number. That's how most of us do it. So in this respect, I actually believe Vernisha's story. I believe that's what happened. I believe that he did take her phone and he dialed her phone, used her phone to dial his phone number. And the reason why I also believe that is because we end up getting text messages that Crystal XO reads on the interview. And the first thread in the text message, Crystal XO read it. And I think she read it wrong or was typed wrong, but she read, hi, were they able to find the bag? That's why I thought, wow, the first text came from Vernisha. But when Crystal XO kept reading the text, she never did read when someone said yes. The next message was, the way she read the text was, hi, were they able to find the bag? And then the next message that Crystal XO reads is, great, I'm glad they were, which was supposed to be Vernisha talking. Well, there was never a reply. That's why I believe the first text message actually said, hi, they were able to find the bag. And that would mean that the first text message came from Mizell, that the first initial contact came from Mizell. Lion Lizell told the story that when he got home and he had finally had his bag, that he had already had a phone call from Vernisha. Like Vernisha was already hitting him up before he even could get in the door. That was the story Lizell told. That before he could even get into the door, he already had a phone call from Vernisha. He didn't say a voicemail. He said a phone call. See, he misrepresented the story. But in the end, it is Vernisha's story that adds up the most, that when they were together in the hallway, he took her phone. He dialed his phone in her phone. So that's why when he finally got his phone, he did have a missed call from Vernisha because he was the one that dialed the number. Snake Mizell lying. But nonetheless, when he does get his phone, he then, I believe, is the one that texts Vernisha and says, hi. they were able to find my phone. She then says, great, I'm glad they were. He then says, it was a pleasure meeting you. I'm glad we talked tonight, and I hope you ladies had a great time. She says, me too. I had a great time. He says, cool. I hope we can make some time to talk soon. She says, we can. Tell them you want a date with me. Can't spot a snake. Can't spot a snake. Like I said, a snake can't move over here unless there's a woman willing to help the snake move. This is the problem that I have. Lizell the snake can't make no moves without Vernisha helping him along. And she should have recognized from the very beginning that he was a snake because she's too old not to have recognized it. Go ahead and call. She says, we can tell them, she tells him, you can tell production you want a date with me. And that's when he then picks up the phone and he actually calls her. Because you know what the snake says? I got a live one. That's what the snake says. The snake says, I got a live one. I've been given the invitation. I've been given the go ahead to continue in my snake ways. And he didn't get shut down by Vernisha. And so the snake keeps on slithering. That's when he calls her. That's when they start texting back and forth, right? That's when he texting about earring backs. Do you got an earring back? They texting back and forth about different things, whatever the case may be. And that's when the next day, Vernisha, who's never had a conversation with Sharice, who decides to tell Ashley before she even talks to Sharice, of all the people to tell first, that she's been texting back and forth to this man, that she has no idea yet how Sharice feels about him. And the first person she tells is Ashley. Like I said, a snake can't slither unless there's a woman willing to help him. And then when the snake, Lizell, gets cornered by Sharice, because now we know Vernisha finally does tell Sharice. She didn't even know that Sharice was interested in keeping Lizell. She goes, well, Sharice really wasn't interested in Lizell. How do you know, Vernisha? You didn't ask her. Oh, well, she never talked about him. So what? Maybe she was keeping it private. Maybe she was keeping her feelings private. So what Vernisha assumed that was because Sharice wasn't glowing about Lizell, she wasn't interested, so he became fair game. Nah. Like I said, just because you can doesn't mean that you should. Okay? It speaks about your character and what you're willing to do. And let me tell you, men look at what you're willing to do because then they know what they can do to you. Lizell took it as a cue when Vernisha said, we can talk and get to know each other. Call production. Call production. He said, I got a live one. Now, what Vernisha says is she was telling him call production because she's not going to let no man date her in the background on the side. Woo! Well, why would you think that, Vernisha? Because I think that's Vernisha's history. I said it in my last video that I think Vernisha has had a lot of situations where she's had men who wanted to date her and date other women. And she says, because she said it in her interview, I'm not going to let him try to date me, sneak and date me on the back end behind. You mean like you and Joelle was doing on Ready to Love? When you was in the background, having physical relationships, when that really wasn't what you were supposed to be doing on the show, and that was in the background. So you've learned from that situation now. So now you want production to know about everything because you didn't do it on the Ready to Love. Maybe you just don't engage in it, period. Maybe you just don't engage in it. Maybe that's more of the solution. Not being open and honest about it, but maybe you just don't engage in it. Vernisha said on her interview with Kristen, like, so this is a problem in her life. She says a lot of men just don't believe what she says. She says the men think they want to date me. They think they want to date me over here. But then what happens is they listen to me and they hear what I tell them and they realize what they think they were getting, they were not getting. And it goes back to what I was saying. The Vernisha is confusing. She sends mixed messages. Her style of dress and the moves that she makes men think she's easy. It makes men think that, oh, she's fair game. She ready to play. She ready to get a little wild with me. She's willing to do some things over here. That's what the men think of Vernisha. But Vernisha actually is probably a nice woman. So what Vernisha is saying is the men get this one image of me because I'm slithering around. I'm letting this snake slither around me. I'm wearing these tight clothes. I'm showing my nipples. But honestly, I'm not that woman. I do actually have some standards. Well, this doesn't match this, Vernisha. That's why the men are confused. That's why the men are attracted to the tight clothes, the nipples showing, the fact that you're willing to slither behind Sharice's back. They think you down. They think you game. So that's the man you attract. And then what happens is, Vernisha, you come over here and hit them with some rules. And they're like, wait a minute, I thought you were a woman with no rules. You look like a woman with no rules. So when I come over here to play with you with no rules, but then you start hitting me with these rules, I'm confused. I'm confused. And that's what I keep saying with Vernisha. She confuses men. She presents this woman in front of the men, but over here, then she comes back with all these rules and the men are confused. The men just want to play with Vernisha because that's what she's presenting, but then she hits them with the rules. So Lizell thought he was going to play with Vernisha. That's what he thought. He, just like she said, he thought he could do some dirty down underground stuff with Vernisha. Because when she said, hey, and she was entertaining him behind Sharice's back, he was like, oh, she good for the underground. She's good for the side chick. That's what he said about Vernisha. She's good to be the side chick. And Vernisha said her history in dating is, you're not going to date me with other women, which means she gets a lot of that. Vernisha says, I'm not sharing you and I'm not putting up with your disrespect. But what she presents in the beginning looks like she's down with it. It looks like she's down with it. And then she hits them with the rules. She hits them with her principles. Her outer appearance, how she's moving, what she says, doesn't fit with Vernisha's rules. Vernisha needs to change her presentation. Because her presentation is attracting the wrong type of guy. She's attracting the snakes like Lizell, who think she's down and ready to play, and she's not. She needs to stop attracting them. And I know that may be hard for her to change up the way she dresses and the way she moves, but if she doesn't change that, she's going to keep attracting a whole lot of snakes who like to slither. And then because she doesn't know how to spot a snake, she's going to end up getting bit by that snake just like she got bit by Lizell. Because the other thing what I'm wondering is, if Vernisha was really just concerned about whether or not they got their bags, and that was the only reason she allowed Lizell to get her number, then she could have had that conversation with Tabari. Because remember, Tabari was in that same situation. If she just wanted to know if they found their bags and their phone, she could have called Tabari. That was her keeper. She could have the conversation with Tabari and say, hey, did they find you and Lizell's bag? She didn't need to have no conversation with Lizell. But at least Vernisha was honest in saying that they were flirting with each other. At least Vernisha was honest in saying she actually did have an interest in Lizell. She liked the way he looked. He looked good. She was attracted to him and he was attracted to her. At least she was honest in admitting that, because that's really what it was about. She was attracted to Lizell and she was willing to go along with it without clearing it up with Sharice. And like we said, she was under no obligation to clear it up with Sharice. Neither was Lizell. There is no obligation. There's no obligation to do it, but it's called decency, respect, morals, integrity, how you move. And when a man sees that you're willing to do that, then he's also can think to his head, well, what other things are you willing to let go? That's when the snake comes slithering in. Let me start testing how much I can get away with. And when I tell you Lizell is a slithering snake, he's been one for a long time. Lizell is 55 years old. He's been doing this a long time, since he was probably 19 years old. He got 35, 40 years. He got 40, 50 years experience out here slithering in these streets. Beware of the Lizells, lady. Lizell's 55. He said his dating range is 35 to 43. That's what he said. 36 to 43. 36 years old, 20 years younger than him. He's willing to do that. And you know what reason why he said he's willing to date 36? He says because older women are intimidated because they feel like he's got access to younger women because he presents younger. He says because, I move younger. I got a young spirit. And then what he says is, all these other older women, they're bitter and angry and I don't want to date them. I want to date the younger women because the older women are bitter and angry. Well, why are they bitter and angry, Lizell? Because of men like you, the snakes of the world. So here you got a man criticizing older women who are his age, talking about how all these women are bruised and battled. But he's actually one of the ones who's been contributing to the bruises. This is like a thief who runs around in the neighborhood stealing from everybody and then complaining about how the neighborhood ain't safe. I don't want to live here no more. It's too dangerous over here. But you one of the criminals running around causing chaos in the neighborhood. That's Lizell. He's basically saying, I don't want to date older women because they're bruised and battered. But yet again, you have a man who's 55 years old, who has 2 children out of wedlock, has never married any of those women, and says, I can't find no woman to marry. It takes a long time for men to mature. You 55. Where's your personal responsibility and accountability? And you over here talking about how women are battered and bruised, but yet you're the one who's contributed to it. You know how many women Lizell has slithered over in his time? He ought to be put in jail. He's 55 years old. He's already got 2 baby mamas. Then he talks about that he really hasn't been in no long-term relationships. He's only been into 2 relationships that lasted even more than 4 years. 55 years old, 40 years out here in this street, and you've only had 1 or 2 that lasted 4 years. You ain't married nobody. You know how many dead bodies, bruised bodies is back in his past. He's a snake. He's a snake. 36-year-old woman, you don't need to get with no man like Lizell who's got all this experience slithering out here in these streets. Why are you wasting your 36-year-old self on him? Why? So he cannot marry you, so you could be another one of his casualties. And I'm not talking about older men dating younger women. I don't have no problem with that. You look, if anybody of you watch Married to Medicine, Dr. G married Sweet Tea over there. Guess what? But Dr. G is willing to marry women. He's willing to marry them. He married the first woman. He was willing to get married. He's not just trying to date women or use up women. He really was looking for a wife. I don't have a problem with older men dating younger women when you want them as a wife, but Lizell ain't looking for no wife. He's looking to still keep slithering and snaking over women and bruising up more women so that he can later on go and talk about all the bruised and battered women when he's one of the main perpetrators in the neighborhood. He talking about he got a youthful disposition. That's why the young women like him. But then he say, I don't really take my phone on dates because I'm of a person age where I don't need to be connected to technology. What? You youthful, but you don't want to take your phone with you on dates? No, you don't want to take your phone on dates because you don't want your phone blowing up from other women while you on the date. Come on, Cat Daddy. We know who you are. He talking about seasoned women are offended by his lifestyle. Ain't no seasoned women offended by his lifestyle. Seasoned women just know about who he is and they stay away from him. He talking about they stay away from him because they are intimidated. Ain't nobody intimidated. They know who you are. They don't want to have nothing to do with you. It's the same thing I talk about women when they be talking about, oh, men are intimidated by me. No, they're not intimidated by you. They just don't want to have nothing to do with you, women. Fix things about yourself. Now you got Cat Daddy over here talking about older women don't really want to get with me because they're intimidated because I got access to younger women. Ain't no older woman intimidated by you. No, not at all. They don't want to have anything to do with you because they've seen plenty of you and they're done with that phase of their life. They're done with it. But these younger women, and I guess people like Vernisha who don't know how to spot a snake, they still dealing with you. It's funny how, Lizell put all the reasons why he has to date a 20-year younger woman on the fact that it's all the problem is the older women. They're tired, they're angry, they're bitter, they don't keep themselves in shape. He had a whole list of reasons, but none of it had to do with him. You mean to tell me in 55 years, let's stop talking about the women, whether they're tired or angry or bitter, because it's the same thing I say about ladies. Let's look at you. In 55 years, 35 years of dating, you haven't found one woman, not one woman in this whole big old world that you wanted to marry. You found a whole lot you wanted to sleep with. You found a whole lot you want to bed. You found a whole lot you want to slither around, but you haven't found one woman that you even wanted to take a chance on and marry, even if it did end divorce. There wasn't one woman even worth the chance. The women aren't the problem. He's the problem. Stay away from 55-year-old men who've never been married. All they've done is had babies with women. And they say that the reason why is because the women are bitter, angry, and out of shape. Stay away from them. Stay away from, do not waste your 36-year-old self on these men. And let me tell you, I see how some of you women could be tempted by it, younger women, because you look at him, 55, he's got all the right words because he knows how to slither with that tongue. He's got all the right words to say. He knows how to say it so much better than a 36-year-old man because he's had a lot more practice. So I know how you could get tempted by it. That's why you can't drink around him, because you got to have your whole wits. You got to have your discernment. And you got to ask yourself, if he's so great, let's say you sit in front of a Mizell or Lizell. If he's so great at 55 years old, then why hasn't he chosen a woman? That's what you got to ask yourself. Why hasn't he chosen a woman? And don't let him say, because it's the women's fault. Don't believe it. Because next thing you know, you're going to be the next person that gets bit by the snake, just like Vernisha did. Lizell is a fast talker, a professional bullshitter, a liar. And I saw it from the very beginning. The minute he slithered on over there from Charisse to Vernisha, I don't care about no rules. I don't care about anything. I look at the way that you conduct yourself. And I said, that's a snake move. That's a snake move. Like I said, I would have never given him my number. I would have never been drunk around him. I would have never texted him back. I would have never done any of that. He would have never gotten the chance to even be standing in front of Charisse and Tamika and denying me and the fact that he chased me. He wouldn't have even had an opportunity to say I chased him or I called him or I wanted to be with him. Vernisha got denied. Vernisha got denied by the snake. And then her ego and her feelings were hurt because it looked like she was the side chick. Like I said before, a snake can't slither unless a woman lets him slither. You can't always change the snake, but you know what you can do? You can stay away from them. You can stay away from them and you cannot help them. That's why I say women need to concentrate on themselves and not always concentrate on talking about the men, because in the end, men, they're going to be snakes out here and they're going to do what they do, but you don't have to be the woman that gets involved with them. You don't have to be the woman that overlooks the slithering and then cry victim on the back end. Vernisha likes to cry victim with these men, but the more I've seen on her on this show, I can see how she gets with the Joelles of the world. I can see how she gets with the Mizells of the world, because she lets these men slither. And she joins in on the slithering. She needs to stop that. She needs to stop it. Anyway, that's it, y'all. Talk to you later. Bye.